Like and follow if you love horror. Is your dad a ghost? Dana didn't want to seem like a child, but was frustrated enough about playing catch-up on these things without having to interpret Ronnie's meaning. Ronnie laughed hard, guffawing long enough that he had to pull off his shades and wipe his eyes. Of a sorts, but never human. Neither was my mother, my real parents anyways. They possessed two mortals for a little midnight toss, and out I popped. I got special gifts from both of them. You're not human? Diana asked. I'm flesh and blood, just like you. Ronnie placed his shades back on and stopped smiling. To Diana, the change in facial features was significant. She had to learn to read those things. Your flesh and blood parents were Hopi? She probed lightly, hoping to understand. That's what they tell me. Never got to meet them. Ronnie's tone hardened significantly. I'm sorry. She couldn't think of anything else to say. Wow, there's a first. Ronnie was sarcastic, of course, but Diana didn't pick up on it. However, Wolf did. You're the remnant of a failed attempt at ethnic cleansing, erasure of identity. Wolf could sense the sour contempt. He'd heard it before. He had familiarity with it that only came to people who had shared that broken lineage. Can't get away with murdering children? No problem. Take them from their parents, Americanize and Christianize them. Ronnie's tone softened a bit as he realized Wolf understood. But those barbaric practices were made illegal almost a full century ago. Diana wasn't blind to the fact that practices continued after they officially stopped, but wondered how old Ronnie could possibly be. Sorry to break it to you, Diana, Wolf said. The orphan slave trade was going strong in America until probably about the 40s. Even then, our laws about adoption and child labor only applied to American children. So a bunch of agriculture is still grown by kids. Fun little side note, one of the perks of farmers tend to give their definitely not slave labor, is church. My guess is Ronnie here was forced to pick cacti in Arizona and had no idea who or what he was. I didn't even know I was Hopi until I was 33. And that was only after I sued to force the boys' academy to release my documents, Ronnie chuckled. Still can't speak the language. Mother gives me grief about it all the time. You think you have it bad. Usually my mom's guilt is about the lack of grandchildren. Who raised you, technically? My money's on the government. Wolf probed deeper, in a chummy way he hoped would allow Ronnie to open up to Saperstein. Yeah, I was a ward of the state for maybe about 10 months till the age of 16. Ronnie shook his head, then his smile returning slightly. Then my real parents revealed themselves to me. I fought to get emancipated, started studying the old traditions, eventually went to college, and wound up working for the same government that took my life from me. Go figure. That sounds a little insane. How did you get roped back into the feds? Wolf asked. That's a very good question. I ended up in the military of all places. I guess I just wanted to be a warrior. I needed training and a way to practice my abilities. Ronnie seemed distracted, lost in thought for a moment. Without a people or a physical family, I really needed a purpose, but Mother and Father guided me the whole way. After a tour, law enforcement seemed to be the natural next step, but I was educated as well. I just flat out took me farther than I ever intended. Maybe I thought I could make a difference. Because of Wolf, Diana had learned more about Ronnie than she had in the last few months on the team. She shrunk inside herself a bit, defeated by her usual inability to connect with people. That meant connecting to Wolf was unlikely. Wolf glanced over at the woman who'd suddenly become quiet. He empathized with her, being thrown into reality in which not only did boogeymen exist, but you had to hunt them and keep them secret. He looked back at Ronnie and smiled. You ever envy people who don't have a spirit guide or guardian angel? It sounds peaceful to me. Ronnie smirked at the thought. He didn't know how to respond exactly. Mother and Father had always been part of who he was for as long as he could remember. They had never been intrusive to his life. Rather, they were voices in his head, a tug in his gut. While they could and did communicate in his dreams and when he dreamwalked, something like Mother told him that Wolf's experience was very different from his own. Instead of answering, he turned his attention back to the case. Looks like we're here. Also looks pretty abandoned, Ronnie said, parking behind Joe Jack. Not being able to access Inquisitor on a case like this was frustrating, but between him and Wolf, maybe they could have enough magical sense to track what was happening. Jera was still back at the office, attempting to track down reports of anything similar happening across the country. Luckily, deboning victims wasn't the very common occurrence, even in urban legend. Diana nodded in agreement. Are all slashers as inhuman looking as the Frankenstein we faced? Her mind was working at building profiles for creatures outside the norm, and it was no easy task. But that's why they had recruited her. She was, as far as Miranda was concerned, the best. Sometimes her brusque manner rubbed Ron the wrong way, but she was trying, and by all gods, he wouldn't stop her from becoming an asset. Generally speaking, we've never come across anything that could pass as a real human before, Ronnie answered, but he seemed distracted. Wolf watched them thoughtfully. Ronnie had to wonder how much new information they were handing to this virtually unknown man simply because Joe Jack said to trust him. Then again, Ronnie had to admit Wolf had an air about him that made you trust him like you would a caring teacher, or perhaps in his case a rabbi. The last creature who's talking here? Diana. The last creature lived in a lake, almost no way for humans to stumble upon it by accident. We can probably assume this thing would choose a similar living situation. Diana watched Joe, Jack, and Giuliani approach and bit her lip, trying to figure out how to neuter her language to avoid giving away anything to the uninitiated. Her normal social life was dead enough that it wasn't usually a problem. We also know the killer uses traps. If they're here, or if they ever were, we need to be careful. Watch out for anything that seems out of place and watch each other's back. Ronnie tapped his cheek just under his eye. We also know that this killer prefers hunting groups of people recreating paintings. Let's not give it a chance to make art out of us. Ronnie examined the entryway of the estate. It seemed cartoonish to him. In his line of work, he'd seen plenty of old, run-down buildings and weird things, but this place was like a caricature of a rich person's home. Moth-eaten red velvet drapes hung haphazardly from the windows. Torn paintings depicting severe-looking old white men were mounted on the wall. In fact, everything here was in some state of disrepair. But that made sense. Everything of worth had been carted away to the estate sale. I don't get why we're here, Giuliani said, looking around. You said all the murders are connected to the estate sale from this address. Should we maybe check out an auction house or the auctioneer? Maybe they're targeting groups who bid, or the curator, right? Because these have been. Fuck, I'm really screwing up here, aren't I? Or the curator, right? Because these have been traveling as part of a gallery. Well, at least the kid had a future. His mind was in the right place for the normal killer. Ronnie nodded. Sure, but we also figured the killer probably had some connection to the actual collection. There might be clues here. Hell, the killer may have come here and left some sort of evidence. It seems sudden to me, Diana muttered, looking around. Suddenly killing entire groups of people, you would think there would be a sort of ramp-up or experimentation before it went all out. Ronnie nodded a little. She wasn't wrong. Slashos, as Joe Jack called them, tended to gravitate towards the two extremes. The super thoughtful target seekers who only went after specific people and circumstances, and the nearly mindless killers who butchered anything in their path. This slasher was an unfortunate mixture of the two. We should try to find... oh, that's Wolf. We should try to find its sketch pad, Wolf said, staring at the painting hung high